All right, good morning, everybody. Wrap up those conversations that you're having. Put those smartphones away. Turn them over. Don't get distracted. I know it's hard. It's hard for all of us. Hi, everybody. I'm Betsy Hall, and I am one of the deputy principals in the middle school, mostly connected to 7th grade. And normally, Chris Beingessner, our principal, would be the person who would be launching today's coffee. Chris is a little bit under the weather, and so he's home recovering today. So I was happy to step in and introduce you today to smartphone, social media, and AI companions. But really, the people who will be doing the heavy thinking and lifting throughout today will be all of you and Stan Richards, who will be facilitating most of this. But if you're wondering what we're going to be talking about today, just take a moment to read through our what, why, and how. Whenever we start faculty meetings, we always like to start with this kind of framework. What are we going to be doing? Why are we doing it? And how are we going to be doing it? So that everybody's kind of understands how our time together will unfold. So just take a moment to read through our purpose today. So the what really is, we're going to be looking at social media trends, the app landscape in the middle school, AI apps and chatbots and how those are evolving. And why are we doing this with you all today? It's really to support you in managing your child's social media usage at home and beyond safely and successfully. And then we're going to share with you some tools that you might be able to use at home in support of your children. But I want to start by just talking about smartphones. I see smartphones out and about now. My smartphone's sitting right over there. Hopefully when you walk through the middle school, you don't see a lot of smartphones. We last year conducted a school-wide review of smartphone usage. And from our observations and from all of the research that has been emerging, how many of you have actually read The Anxious Generation? Anybody read? Okay. So that book was very powerful in laying out a variety of reasons why smartphones are really hard on teens. Phones prevent face-to-face communication. Even when we just have the phones sitting on our tables, they are distracting us. And so even when we're not even looking at them, we're aware of them and we're pulled toward them. I know that I sometimes go out to restaurants and look over at another table and everybody at the other table is on their phone instead of talking to one another. Anybody else noticed that in restaurants or out and about? And so we really, in the middle school, we don't want that to be the case for our students here. We want people to have face-to-face communication. We don't want them to be spending 3 or 5 or more hours on social media every day because we know that the longer they spend there, the more it impacts their mental health negatively. Loneliness has doubled since 2012, since smartphones really became instrumental in our lives. And there's even a brain drain effect where the mere presence of your smartphone reduces your available cognitive capacity. So you just can't do as much or think as much when that smartphone is distracting you. 50% or more of kids are getting 237 notifications per day or more. Some kids are even getting up to 4,500 notifications a day. It's really hard to get anything done if every second or every few seconds or minutes you're being distracted by a notification. And so historically in the middle school, for the last several years, we've had the expectation that phones belong in lockers between 8 a.m. and 3 p.m. And you could use your phone in class if your teacher had a purpose for it, but otherwise it should be in your locker or maybe in your backpack. And at break time or lunchtime, we shouldn't see these things out. Now, kids found workarounds, but basically between 7:30 and 8 last year, if you were to walk through our foyer, you would see a lot of students on their laptops, on their phones, playing games, sharing memes, whatever it is that they're doing. But they would have technology between them and the people that they were interacting with. And so this year we decided to tighten it up after doing a review. And we we decided to trial some different tools. So one trial, we started back in January and February, and we just asked 2 teams in the middle school to try out kind of not just expecting the kids to put their phone in their locker, but actually physically removing the phones from students. So trial 1 took place on 7B last year, where each of the advisors had a phone box, and at the start of every morning, the kids would bring their phones if they were in that advisory, put it in the box, it would stay there all day. Teachers kind of kept them locked up in their rooms, and then at the end of the day, they would come back to their advisor and they would get their phone back. On 8A, we trialed Yonder pouches. Now, Yonder pouches are actually it's literally a pouch that blocks the signal for phones, so phones can't receive notifications, and you lock it with it just clips shut. Perhaps you've seen one because your child probably has a Yonder pouch. And so 8A tried these out. Now, when we launched them on 8A and when we launched the trial on 7B, those students were like, oh, really? Come on. Nobody else has to do this. Why do we have to do this? But it was really, really interesting because once those trials were underway, the kids, we surveyed them. We spoke with them in focus groups, and a number of them said, it didn't really change anything as long as you're following the rules to begin with. It literally changes nothing. So for them, they were like, oh, okay, this actually isn't that big of a deal. We didn't get a lot of pushback. The pushback came from the students who didn't have Yonder pouches or didn't have the phone box, and they were all very anxious about what the Yonder pouch was going to mean for them if this trial went well. And so the trial went well. And after spring break last year, or maybe it was right before spring break, I want to say it was right after, every single middle schooler got a Yonder pouch. And we launched it. And we have really seen a transformed middle school with Yonder pouches in place. With that clear expectation, it has led to fewer conflicts between teachers and students, where students are like, their phone is ringing in their bag, or they're trying to sneak a message in their locker. They used to leave their phone in their locker and then go to their locker to get their materials for the next class, and then they'd be looking at their phone. Parents, oftentimes they're looking to see the messages that you've sent them. Now they can't see those until 3 p.m. each day. We've also, this year, so this was the winner. Yonder pouches were the winner. And so now, every day when kids come on campus, we are a community. This is actually a poster that you will see around the middle school. We are a community that values face-to-face time over screen time. And that's why SAS Middle School is a tech-free campus until 3 p.m. So we've noticed this year, last year, the tech-free kind of expectation started at 8 a.m. Now it starts as soon as you step into the middle school. So when you come into the foyer at 7:30, 7:40, 7:50, it's got a totally different feel to it. It's louder. Kids are interacting. They're talking to each other. They're building relationships in ways where screens are not a distraction. And because every single student in the building isn't on their phone or isn't on tech, they're not worried about missing out on something. They're actually going to be missing out if they're not engaged face-to-face. And so I'm really excited, actually, to see our Panorama data, which will be administering Panorama, which is kind of a screener for us to understand how students feel about our community. And I'm excited to see if having these kind of new tech expectations make this feel like a stronger community to our kids. So now, laptops are away outside of class time as soon as you walk on campus. Yonder pouches, phones are in them. Smartwatches are also in Yonder pouches because smartphones get notifications as well. And headphones and earbuds are allowed only when the teacher gives students permission. And sometimes they do need to use them in class, depending on what they're talking about. or what activity they're engaged in class. But I just wanted to give you a little bit of a history of where we are, particularly for our 6th grade families or families who are new, where this whole idea of Yonder Pouches came from and how it really is having a positive impact on our community. And so now I'm going to hand it over to Stan, who's going to talk about social media.
Okay, my turn. Okay, and the phones, sort of getting on top of the phones actually has sort of implications for social media on campus as well, because those two go together. Yes, you can engage with social media through multiple ways, but by far the biggest way that people, our students included, interact with social media is through their phones. So having those phones away during the day for us is very impactful. And I was talking to Betsy just before we started here. All of our 3 topics today, smartphones, social media, and the new one that we've added in this year, AI companions, are really about things that we don't really use at school, on campus, in classes. But we know that during middle school years, this is when these things really bubble to the surface, and you as parents have to manage that. So where we can be supportive, and obviously what happens at school, and how parents and as a whole community, if we are all sort of on the same team, singing from the same hymn sheet, and all of that, it does help everyone. So, social media. All right, a little bit of social media bingo here at your tables. Okay, just sort of quickly, I'm going to give you about a minute to see how many of those you as a collective group can identify. And don't shout out the answer, because the other tables will be listening. All right. So let's see how you went. You can keep a sort of like a private scorecard for your particular table. So let's sort of wander through here. Starts off pretty easy, okay? Instagram, TikTok, Discord. If you've got a child who's big on gaming, that might be one that... this one? All right, bit of an advantage for those of you. I have no idea. I'm assuming that says Red Note. Okay, that's a new one that sort of has come to the fore since the US government decided to sort of say no to TikTok, and certainly for the Western world, we were introduced to this. Telegram. YouTube Shorts. So YouTube's answer to TikTok. Okay, got to keep up with the competition. Reddit. Oh, I've got one. All right, Twitch. Again, a little bit like Discord. If you are sort of a gamer, you would instantly recognize these twos, because these are apps which sort of bolt onto gaming things. So as the game goes on, you've got a social chit-chat going on as well. Pinterest. All us sort of adults in the room know this one here. So our art teachers have to force the kids to use this one. This is X, which is the old Twitter, Snapchat, and Messenger. All right, well done. Okay. So you've had a quick chance to sort of a little bit of competition with your tables here. I just want to give you a couple of minutes because there's probably people sitting at your table, you don't know their context. So just quickly give you a couple of minutes just to have a quick chat with each other, because we're going to be sort of stopping midway through and giving you a chance to talk all the way through today. So yeah, set some context, who you are, what grade is your child in. Is this your first experience of having a middle schooler go through the system. So this might be some of your first experiences with phones and social media, what you're hoping to get from today, and maybe what's your social media weapon of choice. So, give you a couple of minutes to have a quick chat with your table buddies. Okay, so if we can wrap that up, and there'll be other opportunities for you to confer with your people at your table. Just for context, hands up if you are representing a grade 6 student. So grade 6 parents, okay, excellent. A grade 7 parents. All right, there's a little bit of expertise in the room here. Grade 8 parents. Okay, 2 hands in the air if you've got multiple kids in. All right, wave them around because these people in the room are the ones who have the most current context of what having a middle school child is like. Okay, so just want to spend some time looking at sort of trends, both outside, a little bit of outside of SAS, but more sort of specifically from within our own community. Singapore, often in the Straits Time, they have articles about, dealing with kids, smartphones, social media. In the US, a lot of the information we get is through an organisation called Common Sense Media. They've run multiple large-scale surveys with the US population. You can see some of the results there from 22. 89% of students, teenagers 13 to 17, have smartphones. 70% of them use social media every day. It's pretty clear that phones and social media are a big part of the teenage sort of existence. With it, you, as part of your RSVP to this session, sort of filled out a little bit of information. We've been collecting this information for a number of years now, so I've kept 2023's information up there. So looking at, does my child have a mobile phone? We can see a small drop in the number, but it's fairly consistent. Does my child use social media? We can see there's a little bit of a drop there within our own community, as parents reporting that their child isn't using social media, which sort of resonates with some of our messaging that you'll hear later. And then in terms of how involved parents are, we can see here that we've got an increase of my child doesn't use social media, but we've got an increase in parents that are regularly and all of the time. Little increase there. So I think parents as a general rule are being more involved with what their child is doing with social media. In terms of the students, we have about 3/4 of our student populations that report that they have mobile phones. Not all of them bring them to school. Certainly with the Yonder pouches coming into force, we have a lot of families, students saying, well, why bring my phone to school? I don't need it. I can't use it. But there are many situations, particularly in Singapore, which is very heavily involved in having apps if you need to catch a taxi or a trip or whatever, pay for things. The phone is becoming increasingly the mechanism for that to happen. Social media, we again have about 3/4 of our students reporting that they have their own accounts on social media. And in terms of parental involvement, we've got students reporting that a lot of them have parents who are watching over their shoulder, are interested in what they're doing, are concerned about what they're doing, that they are involved. And all of that is good information, and good to hear and get feedback from. So you can see we've got some decreases in the mobile phones and social media. Small, I would say that's fairly insignificant. It's pretty consistent over the years with the number of phones and social media accounts that our students have. This is this year's data from the students. So obviously, as you would imagine, there's a sliding scale between having their own phone by grade. Grade 6, less than half, and close to 9 in every 10 students in grade 8. And so that sort of sheds light on the fact that middle school is when getting access to a personal device like a smartphone sort of happens. And so we see that sort of in the stats there. Okay, in terms of what the students are using, I ask students to sort of share what is the social media platforms that they use. You can see here that YouTube and YouTube Shorts collectively is by far the largest capture of our students' attention social media-wise. Chat apps come in second. And then the trio of, well, my number 3 didn't turn up. Okay, Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, these 3 here, the combination of those would come in third in terms of student use. And again, you can see the breakdown between grade 6 through to grade 8 of students acquiring social media accounts. We've got a similar growth period between grade 6 and grade 8. So it really sort of stresses that middle school is when this sort of desire to have a phone, to have social media, to be sort of branching out, be more independent is happening. Okay. Whoa. Okay. Interesting things happening with my slide presentation. Bear with me. Aha. I must have been standing in the wrong spot. Okay, so this is sort of, in terms of the social media landscape, these are the popular apps. Okay, and I haven't mentioned YouTube in there specifically because it's sort of a little bit different than other social media apps. This has been pretty consistent over the last 3 years. We've got some new faces. Red Notes, this is the first year this one's popped up. YouTube Shorts, only in the last couple of years. As I said, the YouTube Shorts was a response from Google for TikTok's popularity, and they sort of borrowed that short format and rebranded some of their things there. And then the ones that started off the social media thing, the Facebooks of the world, our students are not using much at all. They see that as an adult. That's for the old folks. So. Which one? Oh, that's Google Chat. It's actually the old icon for Google Chat. And the reason it pops up so high for us is because we're a Google school. But just on Google Chat is several years ago, particularly coming out of COVID, we recognised that chat was a huge disruption. So we rolled out for grade 6. We actually cut them off from Google Chat, and then we rolled it into grade 7 and then into grade 8. And we currently don't have Google Chat for our middle school students just because of the disruptive. And we turn it on for special cases. We have students who are in the robotics team, and they have high school mentor that they work with. So there's a real need for them to have that. We don't want to force their team to go out of a school system just so they can communicate. Similarly, we've got sports teams that we'll use, and when they travel internationally, we will put kids in, we'll turn that back on for them. So that's one there that we have managed for quite a while. Gaming sites also have a social aspect to them, and for some of our students, this is the extent of their social media. It's wrapped up as part of gaming. Fortnite, I'm happy to report, is sort of really not as popular. When I first came, 8 years ago, it was a real thorn in my side, keeping tabs on Fortnite. It was all the rage. It sort of has died off significantly. Roblox and Minecraft seem to be the two big games that the middle schoolers get into. But as I mentioned before, there are social media elements attached to that, either within the platform itself, in the game itself, or with companion apps that they, and Discord and Twitch are those two. And then YouTube, which is not really a social media platform per se. It's sort of like what kids use as television now. Back in my day, it was the television that the parents were all screaming and pulling their hair out about, and it was going to turn us all into zombies because we spent too much time looking at TV. Now it's YouTube's turn to have the same sort of criticism. But the commentary component of YouTube is significant and operates very much in a social media way. So it is very much, I would put it under the umbrella of a social media platform, due to the fact that you subscribe, you get push notifications, so messages are being sent to you rather than you just consuming content. So it does have a lot of those characteristics of a social media platform. And as we saw from our student data, this is by far their number one avenue. Not so much, they're probably not going to YouTube for the social media context. They're going there for the entertainment of what's showing, but it's got that social media element baked into that. Okay, as I mentioned before, it's the mobile phone where most of that interaction with social media, the apps and the way the apps are designed, really play into the way that social media is designed. But having said that, you can access social media through a computer. Why is social media so attractive to our students? And again, why is my... All right, there we go. And I wasn't meant to show you that last bit. All right. You're meant to chat and come... Oh, there, let's go. Have a minute or two with your group. I hope no one read that. Showing the answers, whatever. But have a quick chat. Why is social media so attractive? I mean, we're not that far removed from our teenagers, but why do teenagers in particular? So have a quick chat. All right, I've already shown you the answers. Not that there is any one set of right answers here, but I am sure that within your conversations you probably touched on and shared sort of reasonings why social media is so attractive, particularly to teens. Number one, there's that social connection and the fact that it continues. In the good old days, I put myself in there where I would go to school, I would meet with my schoolmates during the school day, and then you went home. And that was it for the day, until you went back to school the following day. You sort of, the conversation didn't continue, all that sort of. Maybe you jumped on a telephone, and sure, there was the one telephone and the huge long extension cable. So if you wanted to have a private conversation, you would take it off and shut in the bedroom and whatever. But the wasn't really plausible. Now that social connection can continue. There's immediate rewards, that sort of immediacy in the responses to questions. Again, you didn't have to wait till the next day or after the weekend to continue the conversation. It's a status symbol, okay? It's a sign of popularity. You've got a social media account. You're talking with your friends. You might have other friends that are outside of the school there. So there's a real perception that if you've got social media accounts, that you're successful as a teenager. It's a way for them to get away from the real world. It's sort of, they can indulge in sort of fantasies and sort of escaping the real world. So they see sort of completely fictitious places or what's happening in other parts of society. And also it's fun, it's entertaining, it keeps them entertained. So they're looking for that sort of fun element as well. And a lot of those things sort of tie to what the teenage brain is going through. Okay, during the middle school years, their brains are going through the second largest sort of period of activity in their life. Okay, from 0 to 2 is the largest time of growth or brain sort of rewiring or wiring, and then during puberty, during those middle school years, the brain undergoes a huge reworking, rewiring, and while that image of the middle schooler brain is fictitious, there is no slamming and punching reflex in the brain or the rebellion center. But the teenage brain is going through major rewiring, and it's sort of primed for social media, okay? The middle schooler is growing up from a child which is very dependent on the home, the parents, and they are looking to establish that independence, that identity. And so they are looking for those sort of affirmations from outside of the home environment, and the peer group becomes hugely popular. So social connection outside of the home is a primary driver for adolescence. The brain is super receptive to and sensitive to dopamine, which is the hormone which triggers nice feelings. Okay, so getting a like or an emoji to one of your messages or a comment are these little micro doses of affirmation that makes the teenage brain feel good. And the other thing which makes social media potentially more... Yep. Yes. Yes. Yeah, you don't need to record this. The frontal lobe of the brain, where sort of good decision making sort of comes from, is going through development. So this sort of sensitivity to the dopamine is sort of like a Formula One accelerator pedal. Okay, they react very, very quickly, but they've got Model T braking. Okay, they find it difficult to sort of slow down. They're sort of always on the go, and social media and that short format really sort of plays into that sort of their attention span and that quick hit of information. And so they find it hugely attractive. And it doesn't help that the people who engineer the social media platforms know this and use it to their advantage. Okay, the colors, the icons, animations, rewards, streaks, all of these things are designed to keep the attention of the user, and that goes for adults as well. And the reason is because they get their revenue by having people on their platform clicking and scrolling. Okay, that's where they've invented that continuous scrolling. A lot of our social media apps never end. It's just this constant stream, and you just keep moving your hand down and it keeps on bringing in more information, which is different to the web experience where you have a page where you can look at the page, you make a decision to then go on to the next page. So it's sort of feeding you that. You've probably all heard the term clickbait, okay? An image or well-crafted sort of heading to grab people and force them to go down that. From a parent acknowledging the tricks of the software developers is one useful way to get them to start thinking about this. I've used this when I'm speaking with students about sort of screen addiction and why they're on there, and talking to them about the fact, well, you know, you are battling against people who are designing this specifically to get you to do this behavior because they want to make money from you, okay? Every time you click on something, somewhere is getting a cent or two because of you. And what I've found interesting is you can share with teenagers that the fact that this is not good, you're wasting time, you're putting off the things you should be doing. The thing that really gets them upset is knowing that someone else is profiting off of their time and clicks, okay? They get really annoyed by the fact that someone is making money from them not doing what they should be doing. And so that's one sort of avenue to just make them fully aware. It also takes a little bit of the stigma, because most will acknowledge, yes, I spent too long doing this. I've been doom scrolling for sort of 3 hours. They know this to sort of take away that judgment that it's your fault that you've done this, that it's actually you've been effectively tricked into doing this because of the way that these social media apps, it gives them, if you like, an escape clause to be able to say, okay, so, all right, I understand that, and it gives them some ammunition that hopefully they can then use to self-moderate. I asked the students, what advice would you give to other students? Most of our students know the pitfalls of social media. They're not blindly sort of going into this. They know. So this is verbatim what's come from our middle school students around what advice would you give other middle school students. And we had over 300 students. You'll have to take my word for it, but I would say 2/3 to 3/4 gave responses that I would judge as being mature and knowing well about the pitfalls of social media. So they know what's going on, and they can speak quite well to, well, you shouldn't do this, or don't share your personal information. Don't make comments on other people's sort of posts. It could blow up in your face. Don't friend people you don't know. All of these things I was seeing in the students' comments. So, you know, that's a really positive thing, that the vast majority of our students have that sort of knowledge, and that's something that you, as a parent, you can tap into. Open-ended question. What do you think the pitfalls are of social media? If you've got a child who's spending a lot of time, what are some of the dangers? Get them talking about it. They will probably come up with the sort of the answers that you're wanting them to come up with, and you can reinforce them. It becomes I'm telling you to do this. It comes back to them sort of recognizing and then acting on their own knowledge. Okay, so when's a good time to start social media? Okay, 13 is a number which gets bandied around all the time by the makers of social media. People like me saying 13, no, you can't do it until you're 13. Where does that 13 come from? It actually comes from a piece of US legislation called COPA, and it's got absolutely nothing about the kids. COPA legislation is all about the companies and what they have to do if they are going to have people on their platforms who are less than 13. So it's not like some magic number where sort of scientists have worked out that the adult brain is suddenly ready to be able to handle this. We all know that our kids develop at vastly different rates. We've got very mature 11-year-olds, and we've got 15-year-olds who are still like they're in elementary school. So COPA is the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act. It's a US piece of legislation which says that if you are going to have users, so account holders who are less than 13, you as an organization, as a company, legally must do a whole bunch of things. You need to get parental consent. You can imagine social media sites not wanting to go through the hassle of getting parental consent. There are also rules about what data can be stored and the types of security that they need to go through to store the data of under 13-year-olds. So as you can imagine, what do our social media companies set as the minimum age? They don't want to do all this. This is a pain in the backside for them, and it costs them vast amounts of money. They don't want to do this. So what they do is they put that age limit on, saying you must be 13 or older to create an account here. And they plaster that on their account setup, and for most part do very little about verifying whether or not the person who then continues on and creates the account actually is 13-year-olds, because as far as they're concerned, by just creating the account and clicking through the thing that says you have to be over 13 gets them off the hook. Okay, they've told you, it's in their user agreements that sort of is 5,000 words long in 0.8 script that nobody reads, and that's their response to that. So that 13, just so you know, is not something that's related to when a child is ready. Now, there is movement in the right direction. Okay, Instagram a year or so ago announced that they were actually setting up accounts which were specifically for teenagers. The Australian government is trying, or has actually legislated, that from a date, I think it's January, social media platform, basically under 16s are going to be banned from using that, and they're working how they do that, and it'll be interesting to see how they do that. But I think there is a recognition in the industry, in governments, that having under 13s or teenagers using social media is a problem. So when? Well, obviously it's personal. Our recommendation is that you delay as long as possible. Okay? Certainly not before 13. If you can hold out for longer, then great. Okay? The longer you can hold out, the more their brain has already developed. So they're moving on from a braking system which sort of matches their acceleration. They're developing tech skills, social skills to be better able to manage that. So, and I know that opens up a real sort of tension, because if your child's friends, a lot of them have social media, it then becomes well, that's not fair, they've got that. So this is easy for me to say, and it's probably very difficult for you to sort of to deal with. But I think all the evidence is pretty clear that the longer you can delay social media or independent social media use is better. Obviously, context is hugely important. Social media does play a huge part. We're all expats here. We all have family and friends that we have left from all over the world. Social media is a fantastic way for expat families to keep those friendships, those family connections live. Okay? And so there is definitely positive elements to social media. And this is probably one that you might have heard. Everyone else has got an account, why can't I? Yes, we have lots of middle schoolers who have accounts. We also have a big chunk of them that are either managed by parents or heavily scrutinized by parents. And that leads me to, if the when is answered, yes, I think it's time for you to, or yes, I'm relenting, I'm going to let you have an Instagram account. How do you go about getting them set up with that so that they are doing that in a sensible way? So the how. Oh, here we go again. And thank you to the parent who said that this was happening in the elementary presentation as well. Makes me feel less bad. Maybe it's because Ben's in the room. All right. I'm going to go ahead. There we go. So think of a driving analogy. Okay. The age of driving is 16, 18, depends on where you are in the world. And no parent that I know of would, on a child's 16th birthday, just throw them the keys to the car and say, "Go, buddy, you're 16. Have at it. Hit the streets. I'm not taking you to school anymore. Drive yourself." Okay? No one would do that. There's a whole series of steps that you need to do to get that, because it's potentially dangerous. Okay? This is what the family car would probably look like. So the same thing with social media. It's a progression. Okay? And so come on. Change sides, see if that works. There we go. All right, so social media progression. Step 1, you be the guide. Okay? So shared use of a social media account. This is probably a really good one to sort of tie in with family connections from wherever and friends that they've left behind. Okay, so a joint family social media account, an opportunity for you to walk them through and say, right, let's look at the settings. How are we going to set this up? To talk about privacy settings and making sure that things are private, not open. Share the creation of creating those posts where you can demonstrate, okay, grammar still is important, okay? And you can jointly engage in the chats and checking it and responding to that. That's a good start. Moving on, you become the mentor. So maybe setting up your child's first social media account jointly. So you're part of the setting up process and then initially you are guiding them in their first post. It's them doing it, their name's attached to this. It's not like a family account, it's their account, but you're in the background helping them with their first posts and things like that. And then lastly, you're the follower, okay? As a parent, I would make this mandatory. If you have a social media account, I'm your first follower, okay? I am part of your social media as someone who's watching what you're doing, okay? And most students will be happy to do this, and then they'll go set up a second social media account which you know nothing about. And they will dutifully do all the good things for you to see and then have another. That's a reality, okay? The same driving analogy. Yes, I'll drop to the shop and pick up the milk and the bread, but I won't tell you that I'm going to take that 20-kilometre detour through that hairpin bend just because I love the curves and that sort of stuff. So you need to be aware of that, that's a definite possibility. Set clear expectations. On the sheet that I put out here, some of those things that I'm talking about here, I've put in a sample social media contract. There are lots online, okay? But I think it's a good start, particularly if you've got a child and you're setting up social media use, that you've got a third point. In a calm, rational point in time, particularly when you're talking about setting up a social media account, have them be part of talking about this. They will agree to pretty much all the checks and balances you want to because they want to get that social media account. That can sit on the fridge. There will be times where things are not going to go well. Okay? Having this third point that's not just you saying, don't do that, or you're banned for a week because you wrote that post. This is a third point for you to say, diffuse things and say, look, let's go back to that contract. We both sat down, we both agreed to this. What's going wrong here? And it's now not you against them, it's this thing here is saying that you agreed to this. This is what we said was going to happen. And so you've got that sort of avenue to have that discussion, and the contract is the thing they can get angry with. I wish I'd never said that. Okay? So it can help diffuse that and make it very clear. Because they will. They will try and bend the rules, and we've all been teenagers, so we sort of know that. Okay, the other thing here, this is very similar to when I talk about screen time balance. There are lots of no-tech things, like having clear expectations, which is going to be helpful. Not having devices in bedrooms. Just to share with you, we don't use social media within our classrooms, but we get quite a lot of social media sort of discipline or things blow up here at school, okay? And a large number of those, the initiating or when all that drama happened was usually late at night. One of our students makes a sort of inflammatory sort of post because they're angry about something, and then that other person blows up over the weekend, and then it sort of raises itself here at school. My very strong recommendation for parents is don't have devices in the bedrooms. Okay, one, it's killing their sleep. Okay, and two, that's often when the wheels fall off and they do things that later on they regret, but at midnight it seemed like a smart thing to do. So, lots of no-tech sorts of things to do, agreed no-tech times. One important one here, be the role model, okay? I know if Chris Beingessner was here, he would jump up right at this moment here and say, in my household, we have dinner time and all the phones are put away and we have a reserved time, and he says, and I am the worst person in terms of keeping to that rule, okay? And kids are great observers of those sorts of things. They have this amazing sort of fairness meter that seems to sit in their head. That's not fair, because they see you do something and they apply the same concept. They don't know that you're sort of managing a $10 million account and the client's sort of blowing up in the background, or you're a principal of a school and you've got a teacher who's sick, and you need to solve something. They just see you using the phone when you said no one was allowed to use the phone. But being a good role model is what they need to see happen. Okay? So I'm not going to go through every point here, but the idea is that it's a progression, okay? That a lot of the things you can set up to help make social media not a painful experience for you in your house with your child using it can happen here. It's not a tech solution, okay? A lot of the problems with social media, they're people problems, not a tech. But definitely, if things escalate, who uses family sharing here? Who's an Apple household that uses family sharing? A lot of you, okay? And this is a great one to be able to have some controls on the devices that your kids use, okay? But it's a progression of where those solutions are. But what I would say, what I suppose my message is, don't ignore the non-tech components of setting up for a good solution and jump straight and think that there's an app that you can rely on to be the social media parenting. No one's invented that app yet, okay? You can probably guess that the social media companies of the world wouldn't allow that app to see the light of day. So yeah, it's involves work. Okay. I've been talking far too much. So with the people at your table, talk about if you've got a child that's not yet ventured into social media, what might be something that you might have a try or put in place. If you are one of those two-hand people who've got multiple kids in middle school, you might be able to say, all right, I had an older child. What was one thing that worked with them? Maybe you'd be able to identify some things that didn't work for them, okay? Knowing what didn't work is as valuable as knowing the things that work, and recognizing that all your kids are different, and what worked for child number one doesn't necessarily mean it will work for child number two. Most of us who have got more than one children, myself included, know that they are two completely different or three completely different people. But have a chat, talk about it, because actually the people, your parenting peers, are probably one of the best sources of information, ideas, strategies out there. Okay? So I'm going to give you a few minutes to share some ideas. Okay. I hope you've managed to pick up a couple of tips and tricks from some of our experienced parents, or at least have some maybe a strategy or a plan for if your child is isn't on social media yet, of a way to make that happen in a purposeful way. I heard some very good tips here about the TV, YouTube only, putting it in front of everyone's eyes that was a good one. Thank you. I just want to share quickly what happens with social media at school. For all intents and purposes, social media is blocked on school. We talked about workarounds and things like that, and I am under no illusions that at various times, and I've been here 10 years, we have gone through a whole range of things, and we will have kids who manage to find a way. So our go-to is, obviously, we've got a full enterprise network filtering that we pay tens and tens of thousands of dollars for, a subscription, and it's updated many, many times a day. We also have people in classrooms, and we also, many of our teachers use Apple Classroom, which, as well as showing what's on the kids' screen, it shows you what apps are actually open on the device. So between those two, we've got a fairly good sort of coverage. But even with this, we have historically, and we've had this for a long time. Obviously, the network filtering's been here for 20 odd years. We've recently, having identified some of the workarounds, our guest Wi-Fi was a place where we had some students. Our guest Wi-Fi doesn't work in classrooms, but we have some classrooms which are close to the public areas where that sort of bleeds in. And so we were, why do we always have a problem in this class? Well, you know, the guest Wi-Fi, they knew that it worked there, but it didn't work elsewhere. So that was part of the reasons why we used to have a guest Wi-Fi which just had a password, so a parent walked on the Eagle Way, type it in, I've got access. Now, you got to jump through a few more hoops, you got to register and all that sort of stuff. Students can't register with their school accounts, okay? Now, of course, yes, they can create their own account and register and that sort of stuff there. But we're closing down the loopholes there. Our phones, part of the reason why the Yondr pouches were our winning trial was because the blocking of the signal. So we had always battled with phones that were either in lockers or in backpacks or put in pockets where they shouldn't have been. And one of our students had pretty much unlimited data package, okay? It was probably a good deal. Parent went, yes, the 120 gig package. I'm only paying $5 more for that. What could possibly go wrong? So, you know, he and his 5 or 6 buddies all just flipped over to his hotspot. All this network filtering, out the window. So, Yondr pouches help us in a large way there. And just new this year, last month, we rolled out Jamf is our device management program. They developed a new feature where the web filtering that's through our device management, which is on top of our network filtering, can now travel with the school laptop outside of the campus. So this disappears as soon as the student laptop or even phone, if they're connected through our network on Wi-Fi, that doesn't work once they're off our network. This now travels with the student device. And yeah, there's been some hiccups. We've had a bunch of 8th grade students who literally got cut off from everything. Okay, couldn't even get to Google Classroom. So we've been tweaking, we've been working out the sort of the flaws in that, but we're pretty happy that now that we can at least say to parents, the laptop is got a higher level of filtering. It doesn't rely on you with the school laptop to set up your home network to do all the things that we do here with a fleet of IT technicians and a very expensive subscription. You don't have that luxury that we have. So this, I think, has been a very good addition. And I'm hopeful that you are maybe seeing this with the school laptop, that they're not able to go to things like social media sites. This does not stand up to hotspotting. Oh, actually, no, I think it does. I'll have to check, but I'm pretty sure it's baked in onto the device. So yes, we have our device management software that's built onto that. So it's part of basically a policy profile gets put onto the as part of their student account, and so that travels with that. So yes, I think I'm pretty sure. I'm pretty confident in saying yes. Any network it goes on to will be protected by this. So I'm hoping parents are finding that the school laptop is no longer a weak spot for your strategy at home. And I know it has been in the past. Parents have sort of tackled the phone. They've got tools to be able to do that, like the family sharing, and some of that fell apart because of the school laptop. That was a way students could get to do that. So that's what happens on campus, but social media really isn't, we don't use it here at school. Some of the exceptions would be art and digital media will use Pinterest, and we've opened it up for those two classes because they use Pinterest for creating idea boards and things like that. Okay, this is the new section, AI companions. So this has sort of raised its head in the last few months. And to our minds, it is sort of a new puzzle piece to the social media. Quick talk. How do you feel about an AI chatbot or persona being your child's best friend? Any takers? Sort of scares me a little bit. So basically, AI companions are apps or chatbots, and they tend to be specifically designed chatbots, not your general ChatGPT open chatbots, but ones are specifically created to not give answers, but to just be a listening ear and a friend. Okay, and there's a couple of sort of named ones there, Character AI, Replica, Nomi.ai. I've got to be honest with you. A month ago, I really didn't know much about this, okay? I'm not looking for online friends. So, but as I said before, the teenage brain, that desire to have social connections, to develop an identity, that sort of emergence of independence, which often throws up conflict between parents and the child, okay? This is right ground for attracting teenagers. And this is where some of the concern comes from. So this is from Replica. It's on their landing page. The AI companion who cares, always here to listen and talk, always on your side. All right, so child has argument with parent. Child goes to his AI best friend. Why are my parents being so unfair? AI chat companion goes, I know, buddy. Parents are awful, aren't they? And you can imagine, and that validation of maybe risky behavior or completely inappropriate behavior, because they are crafted, they are designed to be friendly, to be affirming. AI companion with memory and soul. No matter what you're looking for, Nomi's humane memory and creativity foster a deep, consistent, and evolving relationship. Okay. Common Sense Media, they've just put out in July, from their US survey, 70% of teens have used AI companions, and they are reporting that 50% use it regularly. I thought those were rather high, so I asked our students. Okay, so our students are reporting that 2/3, what? Don't know what you're talking about. Okay. Okay, but we've still got 1/3, okay, 40% used it once or rarely. We have about 10% who are self-reporting of saying they are using AI companions on a regular basis. I asked you guys, 20%, no idea. 3/4 no, and a smaller chunk yes. That sort of yes and that yes, I think, are the sort of the standouts. These are sort of things which on the surface might appear harmless. So, and I think if I was to ask the same question I did about social media to the students who, were giving me back what I thought were pretty mature adult sort of responses, I'm not sure I would get the same, at this point in time, I would be getting the same sort of cautionary type of responses from the students. And I think this is one of the things that sort of collectively we need to sort of keep an eye on. It's new. It's definitely new having an online avatar, which is your friend, that's sort of a shoulder to cry on, someone to give advice to you or whatever. I think we need to be cautious, need to be super curious. I would be reticent to be angry, okay? An angry parent is probably destined to drive the child sort of further away, and yeah, I have no doubt that maybe there are some sort of good things about having a chat bot that can be friendly, okay? I think it's about some of the reliance on that and then it becoming the default place where a child goes through. So, like social media, like social phone use, talking about it, being curious, keeping that conversation alive, okay, and that's where the anger thing can sometimes break down that conversation. Keeping the conversation going, exploring together, okay, and while you're exploring together, that's where the discussion, your adult brain is going to be able to say, oh, that was a bit of weird advice from your buddy there. That doesn't seem very safe at all. What do you think about that? That seems a little risky or dangerous. And I think share your concerns. If your child knows that you have a concern that this AI, which is basically just making stuff up, okay, that you're worried that they're going to take that and give it a level of seriousness that doesn't really exist. And share those. We can saw from the responses that they gave on social media that your kids are quite capable of, rationalizing and being able to see that danger, but they need your help, particularly in something new like this, to be able to see those red flags and to have those pointed out. So, as I say, this is brand new. I don't have a decade of sort of experiences to fall back on with this one here, so I'm quite honestly standing here in front of you saying this is a space that we all collectively need to be watching out for, because my guess is that AI companions will grow. We might see a drop-off from other social media usage as AI becomes the preferred place for some people. Okay? Well, that's the thing. A lot of the chatbots just run through web pages. They're not like apps on a mobile phone or something like that. These are all relatively new. So the replica one, you're just logging into a website. So, and yeah, we will be talking. At the moment, I'm not sure what our web filtering is doing with some of these new AI things. We have limited access to middle school students to AI. They can't go to ChatGPT. They can't go to Google Gemini. We have an AI tool called Magic School, which is what our teachers use as the only AI experience, because it is designed for schools rather than just open. And yeah, so good question. I'm glad you asked it, because probably this afternoon I will go visit our tech department and say, what are we doing about this? Are they blocked? What's our strategy with these? So thank you for asking. Yep. I have not heard of, nothing's come across my desk, just, can you chat to this kid about this? So this is purely something that's we've seen coming up. Common Sense Media is our default sort of source of information on these types of things, and they've started in the last month or so pumping out things saying, with sort of question marks and warning flags. So we've sort of picked up on this and just started really exploring this, and I thought it was important that this go in today because I can see it being a social media type experience that our kids will be drawn to. And I think at least having it as a topic of conversation and getting in front of it rather than in 12 months' time suddenly going, whoa, where did that come from? We can at least sort of think about this and get ahead of it. So again, I would recommend, if you've not visited Common Sense Media, they've got parent-specific pages. It's quite a broad, they got stuff about software, gaming, videos, movies, all sorts of things, but also tech use. So, as I said, this is one of our go-to places, and I always encourage parents to, because if you like, this is our hymn sheet, and if we're getting sort of similar information, then we can be far more collaborative and coordinated, and that benefits the kids immensely. Okay, this is last week. Yep. That was, I sent out a survey to students just because I normally send out prior to this session just to get sort of an idea of the landscape, and I knew this was an addition. I thought, well, what are our students doing with this? This was the question I asked. Have you used any specific AI apps or general AI chatbots for social interactions, i.e. using AI as an online friend? So that was the context for the question that gave that response there. Yeah, and as I say, there might be some positive things as an idea sort of sounding board. Well, no, I didn't ask further as to how you're using it. It was just the single question. I mean, these are AI chatbots, so the interface is it's text, so they type the students are typing in questions just like you do any other AI chatbot. You type in what you want and it will generate a text response as well. So it's a bit like if they were sitting on Google Chat or WhatsApp texting a friend backwards and forwards. It's a similar sort of interface. Now, I don't know whether or not it will morph and it will become an animated sort of thing where they sort of go into the sort of virtual reality and the friend has a sort of mobile sort of a visual persona. My guess is that if I'm thinking this now, then it's likely already under development. And I know there are already toy companies who are producing soft, fluffy toys for young kids, like sort of kindergarten age kids, which actually have AI bots inside them so that the kid can talk to it and it will respond with AI generated content. So that's already sort of been latched onto by toy manufacturers to, basically give a persona to that fluffy toy to be the child's friend and companion. Now, I don't know whether the content is created on the fly or whether it comes from a bank that's AI generated. As I say, this is all very, very new. Just want to say thank you for those people who ready to go. By all means, head on out if you want to grab some food. If you want to hang around and ask some more questions, I'm happy to hang around and continue that, but I don't want to sort of keep people here thinking, when is this thing ever going to end? So thank you all, and if you want to hang around and ask questions, I can move around and tell you what little I know about AI companions.